G'day there, I'm Ewan Hills, the manager of Aboriginal art gallery called Art Mob here in Hobart. Welcome to a very special exhibition that we've put together to celebrate the life and the artistic ability of a wonderful fellow from Lockhart River, Silas Hobson. Now, Silas Hobson was 46 last year. 21st of October, I had a very sad call from one of his colleagues in far north Queensland, letting me know that he'd died of a heart attack. I was devastated. We called each other Yapu, which means brother in his language. So my brother, my Yapu, Silas Hobson, is the title of the exhibition that was given to us by one of his brothers, one of the family. We got permission about 2 months ago to go ahead with this exhibition, and I extracted my 12 favourite pieces from about the 30 that we've got in stock. And here they are up on the wall for your enjoyment. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how he worked and why he worked. You know, far north Queensland is strong tropical rainforest area. The end of the Great Dividing Range, the big mountain range that goes from the south of Australia right through the very tip, is right there present behind their community. They're about 290 kilometres south of Bamaga, which is right at the very tip of Cape York, on the eastern side. The little township's about 1 kilometre in from the beach, and it's there specifically because of the effect of cyclones through that region. They get hit by about 5 cyclones a year, some coming from the east and then turning around from the Gulf, coming back and walloping them again. So life there from a geographical and climatic position is really quite tricky. Damage is pretty rife, they're used to it, but things like communication, roads, etc. are problematic to that community. Now, back in the early 1990s, a bunch of young people there in that community, including Silas, felt that they needed to do something to brighten up their lives and to put some hope and some spirit and some joy into their community, rather than focusing on the negative aspects of remote Aboriginal town living. And as a result of it, the Lockhart River Art Gang emerged. Silas was the key male artist in that. Others included Rosella Namok, Samantha Hobson, Fiona Arminio, and there were about a dozen of them. They went on from 1995 through to 2007, when the University of Queensland, the Museum of Art there, recognised their abilities and put them on the global map by giving them an exhibition called Our Way. And that really did cement their futures. They went on from there to exhibit very widely around Australia in many locations and also internationally. So Silas had travelled internationally. In fact, the last time he went away was on an expedition that I sent him to Switzerland for. When I was in Lockhart River in 2017, I saw a large piece of his, 3.4 metres by a bit under 2 metres. And I bought it, not knowing where a piece that size could possibly go. As it turned out, the Musée Lagrange in Moutier in Switzerland wanted a large work to celebrate an exhibition called From the Islands from the Sea. And this was one of the key pieces that they wanted. They bought that alongside of a similar size work by Irene Namok, Rosella Namok's mother. And of course they wanted them both to be there at the opening. So we arranged for Irene and for Silas to go over there, paint in front of the Swiss audience and tell them about their stories. Now, Irene was always keen to communicate with people and show her skill in front of an audience. Silas was far from that. Silas did things his way, in his own time, and he wasn't real happy about doing it. And they reckoned it showed in his work and sent it back to me. They weren't going to buy that. I loved it. And I said to Silas, "What's the title of it?" He says, "My Trip to Switzerland." And look, you know, I sold it a couple of days locally to a lovely local couple here. Now, how did Silas work is an interesting thing. You know, he'd tape down a big piece of linen onto a stainless steel table in the art centre there at Lockhart River. He'd then paint a background colour over it. He'd then get some wet paint and put that in the middle of the painting, push it around a bit. Then he'd throw water on it. And then the magic would evolve. As that water evaporated, it would pull that paint together and create all sorts of tensions and surfaces, and ingrained bits and pieces. And I think you'll see some details here on this video of some of those. This one here is particularly strong with the depth of paint there and the effect of that texture. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this one. This is why I'm standing here, is because I think Silas forecast his own future with this particular one. It's called Disturbing Heart. Now, Silas had called me a number of times from Cairns, from the cardiac unit there, and I knew he had a crook ticker. Sadly, I don't think he was looked after all that well in his own community, from a medical point of view, being so remote. And yeah, if you have a heart attack when you're that far away from hospital, your chances of survival aren't all that good. But Disturbing Heart is a magic painting. One of the other paintings is the opposite, saying good heart. But you see here this colour that he's pulled together. But then here's this layering on top of these black figures, and you'll see those in almost all of his works. Now you think, why these long elongated figures? He would get an amazing technique going using a tomato sauce bottle full of black paint and squirt it on. He'd get a stick and extend it into the legs and sometimes swiggle it around to give a body to it. But these tall black figures, from an artistic point of view, could be related perhaps back to Jackson Pollock, and that's what one critic has commented. But to me, they're actually an embodiment of the Quincan rock art figures from that country. That mountainside out behind there, the Iron Range, going right down through to Mount Mulligan, through Laura, is full of Quincan rock art. It's about 30,000 years old. It's the most amazing body of art. If you get a chance to go to Laura, I encourage you to go out with permission from the George family there. Have a look at that beautiful art there. And the figures there are tall, they're elongated, they have very little facial features, perhaps 2 eyes, and not much more. And I think that is what Silas is showing through each of his works. Now sometimes he'll say those are local fellas there with dark skin. Sometimes he'll say they're white fellas as well as black fellas. Sometimes he'll say they're not fellas at all, they're spirit people. They're his ancestors. So a wide range of imagery with his work. He was a phenomenal colourist, and you can see that these paintings speak for themselves. Now Silas had come to us to visit the gallery for exhibition openings on a couple of occasions. 2017 was the last one of them, and he was painting out there in the atrium. I said, "What are you painting out there, Silas?" And he says, go away, come back later." He says, "You'll find out later." So off I went, and you know, what he'd done was a portrait of me and my dog. Now when we were up there in Lockhart River back earlier that year, he'd done a number of paintings about men and dogs, and I was rather intrigued by these paintings and asked him whether he'd explain them. His first response was no, blunt no. A couple of days later, I think the ice had broken a bit, and I said, "Hey Silas, you got about 10 minutes? He said, "Yep." I said, "Let's talk about men and dogs," and we did. And you know, the dog song line starts off way down south near Uluru. It goes up through the back of New South Wales after leaving South Australia, out through the Gulf country in Queensland, and it zigzags its way up through to Bummiga, the very top of Cape York. It's particularly strong at Arakoon on the west side of Cape York, and that's where, of course, the Arakoon dogs come from. But you cross the range from there and you get to Lockhart River. It's also very, very strong there. And now that town has got its usual repertoire of camp dogs, and those camp dogs come back home to their owners that night because they get fed, they get lodgings, then they run off with their mates and do all sorts of dog things during the day. But Silas and I talked about the relationship of men and dogs, and that bonding that you get between your pet and yourself is particularly strong. It's amazing how they can almost second guess what you're going to do or expect of you what you think they should do. And we talked about that. So lo and behold, I go and see what Silas has been painting for me. It's a portrait of me and my dog. Now I said to him, that's fantastic. I could see me, he got the facial features almost right. My redness comes through in it, but my dog's a green dog. And I said, how did you know my dog was green? He said, I had no idea what colour it was, so I made it green. But behind it, you could see the IXL apartment buildings, and you could see these white spirit figures, these elongated figures here, which he'd done in white. And I said, so do you see ghosts around here? He says, I do. It's a very spiritual place. And of course, around here was where Hobart as a colonial city was first founded back in 1804. And pretty sad things went on around this area. And I think even today, there's ghosts around everywhere. But Silas's ghost is upstairs there, looking down on us now, applauding us with what we're doing with his memorial exhibition. I commend it to you. Thank you.